Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the committee, the planning committee for the DD Council. We are on, we're having discussion on goal 2 of our plan. And the first item we will be discussing is the first responder training, which is 2.2.1.
So we had on my page, just watching the TV. On the right, is that right?
So 2.2.1 is first responder training. We're currently contracted with Interaction Advisory Group. And we've contracted them for 3 consecutive fiscal years to conduct in-person and virtual trainings for first responders. Let's see, in the since the start of the contract in October of 2020, a total of 940 first responders, which includes law enforcement and community members, have been trained. And then 276 first responders and community members have been trained this year so far. And so the response has been tremendous. So the staff recommends continuing this activity for the fiscal year 2024, the budgeted amount of $80,000.
We'll say this initiative also has impacts in our neighboring state of Mississippi, because apparently there were, I can't remember, the sheriff's office out there somewhere in northern Mississippi found out what we were doing here and actually reached out to this contractor to start doing trainings for them over there. Obviously not at our expense, but they heard about what he's doing here and asked him to start doing some trainings for them there. If you continue with this contract, we'll probably not focus on virtual trainings because there really hasn't been, once COVID kind of took a backseat in most people's minds, virtual trainings really haven't done well in this project. It's mostly been in-person trainings. Virtual trainings, when he tries to have them, we either have to cancel them because folks aren't registering or just a couple people register. It's been more successful, the in-person trainings, which is what would more than likely occur moving forward. And there are a lot of trainings lined up for the rest of this year. So there's been 8 trainings so far, but he's got trainings coming up in LaFouche Parish, Terrebonne Parish, St. Tammany Parish. Plaquemines Sheriff was already done, but now the fire department wants their whole agency trained, and St. Charles Parish. And all of those that I listed, it's not just hosting in that area, it's an entire agency training. So their entire force will be trained. So it'll be multiple trainings held at those locations over multiple days.
It seems like he's made inroads with those law enforcement agencies, because he's making those contacts to be able to get in, to be able to do those trainings, which is like a key part of what needs to happen, is them to allow you to go in there and do it.
He spends a lot of time between November and I would say probably February, maybe even March, focusing more on trying to build those relationships, because we typically don't have trainings in that time frame. 2 reasons: 1, with all the holidays, folks aren't interested in hosting the trainings. And then 2, right after the first of the year, a lot of these agencies are doing their mandated annual trainings. And so they're not booking things that's not mandated of them. So once those are resolved, then they usually start doing more trainings with them.
Are they building any type of capacity, like as far as like, are they doing train the trainers? Do we have anything that we know?
I have to ask the contractor exactly if he's gotten any feedback yet, but the idea is you're training these people so they can implement their own policies within. So I don't have information on the impacts of that yet.
Okay. Any other questions about this? Joe, go ahead. Eric?
So you basically saying, if we keep this, you're gonna take off the computer stuff, the virtual.
Probably, I'll speak with the contractor to get his thoughts on if he thinks he should even continue to offer any virtual trainings. But for the most part, I think in person is probably more bang for your buck than virtual.
So I always get, sorry, Andy, I have a question. Okay, so you, sorry. So what did the FY 23 contract say? How many trainings were in the original contract for how much money?
The contract that he currently has, it's 18 trainings for the 80,000.
And so
He originally started out with 12, I think, when it was at 50,000.
oh. Okay. I sorry. And then so how many trainings would you put in? Who determines how many trainings to put in the contract?
So we usually work with the contractor to decide what they think they can do, given the amount of money that we have for them to use. So in this particular instance, if he's having to travel for trainings in person, the number of trainings might go down because some of the 18 that he's doing now are virtual. But the trade-off is they're all in-person trainings.
Right.
And he's been getting better results from the in-person, more attendance from the in-person training.
Like, because I know that council members, and I don't know if I'm reading this status reports wrong or I'm just being too picky or what, but and I know that, like, as a council member, the contracts are done in-house. But is there any way I can see like a write-up? Maybe like, okay, this much money, like a write-up of like the contractor's plan?
For next year,
Yeah.
yeah, we have conversations with him.
Okay, I don't know what I just asked. That was full, can't think.
I mean, it sounds like you're asking for their contract, like you have this amount of money and this is what they say they're gonna do with that money.
Yeah, but that's not for my eyes.
But this is you do.
Yeah,
So
I'm
is the training hand-on or is the training just he's basically?
He's the trainer. He's former law enforcement. He does all the trainings, and so he usually has a self-advocate with him in the trainings as well, so they can talk about their experiences. He's also a parent, so he's well-rounded in a lot of disability related topics. So he brings that knowledge to the trainings. And it is a very interactive training.
It's
He does-
dynamic, a very dynamic speaker.
Yeah, he is a dynamic speaker. He also does a lot of, I forget what he calls it. But there's a way that he's been able to incorporate like, survey type stuff into the trainings that he's doing. So the law enforcement officers or the first responders will be there with their phone. They'll respond anonymously to things, and you'll get immediately results on the screen of what their experiences are, what they've talked about, and he can use that as his talking points in that session.
Right.
I haven't mentioned it this year, but actually last year in one of the updates I gave, there were law enforcement, which they should not do, but they did, and he helped them because they reached out, but they were on a call and had an issue. I can't remember the exact dispute, but they were unfamiliar with what to do, and they called him after hours at his house, and he took the call and partnered with the sheriff to be able to talk those guys through what they should be doing. So there's a lot of hands-on training that goes into this. And based on the feedback, most of the participants really can relate. Like I said, he is former law enforcement. And so it's very different when you're being trained by someone that you consider your own than if we just brought in someone who did not have that personal or professional experience.
So at first he started with $5 and then what was that?
Remember how much his previous contract was?
What was
See if I have it.
20,000? Cause I specifically remember last planning committee, we went from, I think, cause I tend to lump AIG and Niagara together, and I think in 22, they were both 20,000.
He started out with 50,000. And then he was bumped up to 80,000 last year, I believe.
Okay.
So he asking us, what is he asking?
He didn't ask for anything of no additional funds. I mean, he'll is basically gonna do what he can do with however much money you appropriate. Obviously, he doesn't want you to cut funding to his initiative.
Right.
But he's not asking for an increase. We're not asking for an increase.
Did any,
So he's not asking for an increase.
And this is one of the ones that was a recommendation from self-determination to continue.
did any contractors, oh, I'm sorry.
Me as a board member, I don't see nothing wrong with it, but that's like you saying, there's the computer thing. This is where I'm confused at, and y'all probably can help me. You saying it's basically hands-on. What kind of training is it? That's what I'm saying. Is it talking training? Is it? That's what I'm confused.
You're talking about activity-based training, like
Yes,
they would do, I don't know if, I mean, they might do some activity, but like maybe talking through scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. That's part of what that concept that I was talking about, getting the surveys, the immediate results of the surveys that he's doing within the training. It's a lot of scenario based situations that are being pulled up. So immediately he'll know what you're thinking about how you should respond, or when he's quizzing them on, do you actually know what a developmental disability is? He can pull up and see, kind of gauge their understanding of each topic before he moves on. He doesn't want to leave that topic until he feels like the room understands what's going on. So that's part of the interactive training that it is.
So it's not physically hands-on with training and stuff like that.
No, he's not riding in the car with them, going out on calls, that kind of stuff. It's not that sort of physical interaction.
Okay. And he got more support from people physically being with him and then on the virtual.
Yeah.
Any other comments about this? Yeah, y'all wanna go with the recommendation of continuing it at 80,000 or change it? I'm on wake up from lunch.
I'm
Have
trying
the coffee over there. Phil.
Yep, I got.
Was it 80?
It was 80,000.
Let's
keep it, yeah.
$80,000, $80,000 for,
Okay, so we'll go to the next item.
I think that.
You don't think so?
Wait, what did you say? Did you say something, Eric?
Keep it at 80, but I don't really,
No.
I don't really much know what's what's going on to keep it at 80,000.
Well, part of it is his travel. So he's not from here. He's in Alabama. He lives in North Alabama. So every training he comes here to do, it's not within a day's drive. He has to get hotels. He's got to feed himself. It's now the way he does his contract, we just give him a set each month. So he has to figure out the travel on his own, but that's all factored into his monthly costs. So
We can always, Eric, once we get to the end, if we want to adjust just the dollar amount, we can, once we get to the end and see what we want to do. So if you want to,
So you're looking at about $4,000 or so per training event that he does. Well, that's materials, all of his technology, all of his transportation, lodging for each training.
I think, can we look at it at the end and just go from there?
do that. Okay, so the next item under goal 2 is activity 2.2.2, which is emergency preparedness and response. And that is contracted through Niagara University. They do emergency preparedness and disability training in Louisiana. The participation in this initiative has been unmatched in any other state, which makes sense with our rate of disasters. But since the start of the contract, 352 participants have attended the training in, well, that was in fiscal year 2021. Then 95 attended the in-person trainings. And they're going to actually be hosting a training in Monroe and Shreveport first week of May.
Yep.
And then they're going to be doing one in Houma and maybe Lake Charles. Is that going to be in this contract year?
Yeah, so those aren't set yet.
Okay.
They're looking at options probably in September to do 2 more trainings. So his contract is up to 5 trainings, and I think he's shooting for completing 5 of them. We've done Baton Rouge already. We'll have Monroe done. We'll have Shreveport done in a couple weeks. And so I think he's looking at coming in September and hitting 2 areas. So he's looking at the Houma Thibodeau area because they've requested for him to go there. New Orleans has been requesting him to go back. I know Lafayette is one of the areas we asked him to look into. We've made some connections recently in Lake Charles because that's another area that we wanted him to hit. So those are kind of some additional areas that he's looking at to see what he can get set. It's going to be based off of what participation we can get in that area as far as from emergency managers and crews. Can you locate a facility to be able to house them for the training?
And the staff has recommended continuing this activity.
I think Ms. Banks has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So when you're talking about all of those agencies, Brennan, is like a various number, right? Because they might have 20 people in the agency, and the next one might have like 30, or the next one might have 15.
Yeah, it might. So he tries to cap the registration probably at about 50 or so people.
Okay,
Because then it's, I mean, number one for space, and then number two to really try to keep it an engaging training. But it's really gonna depend on for participation. So I would say usually every training he's done, he probably gets that many registered, about 10 don't show up. So I probably the 35 to 40 range has been about the norm. And it depends on the area as far as who participates, because it's really targeted towards anybody that's going to be involved in creating those emergency plans for people with disabilities.
okay,
So I know we try to send the information out for provider agencies, sport coordinators, emergency managers. So that would be any of your emergency managers, like if you have Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness for Terrebonne or something, those people, stuff like that.
okay. That's my area that they want to work in, that's my region, so.
Yeah, there was I can't recall who actually requested to go in that area. I don't know if it was an actual family individual or if it was one of the departments there. But also from these different areas, they've been traveling to those trainings. So for instance, in Baton Rouge, it wasn't just people from Baton Rouge. We had people that came from Lafayette. We have
Okay,
people from Camden that are traveling in if it's close enough. And so that's kind of how they hear about it, and bring it back to their area.
I mean, I think Renton.
Bambi's been a bunch of times.
I did with
Life is a bunch.
the full
Right, how many-
2 hours, and then I went to Pineville
Right.
for the half-day training. But I would say that, I know you're saying that it's targeted to those organizations that, do response and that type of thing, but they also want self-advocates
Yeah.
there. It's important. And I know not everybody, like you have to pick and choose what you want to do, but like self-advocates or families, or even like our disability organizations, I know Families Helping Families at the Crossroad was instrumental in doing the one in Pineville. So it's important to have people there who have disabilities or work in the disability
Yes.
community. So get that information out to them as well.
Yeah. And there's also, like Bambi said, that half-day training. It's the last half of the second day. If you don't want to go through the full training, you can participate in the last half, which kind of gives you a little snapshot, if you will. But it's a very intense training in that there's a lot of information, but they give you this massive binder, just full of information of how to move forward, what to do, everything you need. And there is a requirement if you do participate for some individuals. That's not necessarily the requirement necessarily for family members or individuals with disabilities themselves. But there is a requirement to keep following up with Dave as the project director, because he creates what's the name of that? They call it IPAP. It's an IPAP specialist, inclusive planning and active participation specialist. And so that's pretty much his point of contact in these areas that he's training, to make sure that they are following up with this training. They are trying to implement some of these policies. And they are making changes. So you get that certification if you're there for the full 2 days.
Any questions or comments about that? Okay, so it's being funded at 50,000. Do you want to continue that funding? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Renato, Eric, Jill, y'all okay with that? Okay. All right, we got through goal 2, guys. Okay, so next is our goal 3, which the council is recommending for those to end. The next item is the post-secondary inclusive education. Activity 3.1.1, the post-secondary inclusive education alliance.
thanks, you're the cookie.
So the council has been funding that for 3 years. Is that correct? Since 2020. But actually we can't fund this anymore because we were successful in getting funding and for this to continue through the post-secondary, what do we call that fund?
Post-secondary inclusive education.
Fund, yeah, okay. Act 682 of 2022. And so that part of that funding will got $1 million in that fund last year. And hopefully we'll get much more than that this year. And they are going to continue to contract for this coordination to help other post-secondary universities or colleges to develop their programs. So I don't think there's much discussion that y'all have questions, like we can't fund it. So, but if there's a question about that. Okay. And let's see, then the next one is the activity 3.2.1, which is employment seminars. That'll flip over a few pages. And that is the council contracted with O'Neill Communications for 3 consecutive years to do employment seminars. See, they focused on working together campaign, and they've also worked with held webinars and partnerships with local chambers of commerce, the Society of Human Resource Managers, LRS, and Workforce Commission. They have, this year, they took a deeper dive into topics and including implementing storytelling formats, and all of their seminars are available on the council's YouTube page. There are 12 videos averaging over an hour in length. And there will be more added right now because we're currently contracted with them. So the recommendation is to discontinue this activity for next year because the contractor has experienced difficulties finding new panelists and developing topics to discuss.
So does that go hand in hand with that video and measure on the company?
That's the same company. Yeah. Yeah. So the council is recommending we discontinue. Any discussion? Okay. So we're gonna,
That we, even though we discontinuing, we still gonna try to do the advocacy of pushing it out there.
yes, yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take that out of the plan. Okay. So our next item is to review the draft of the,
Probably before we get to that,
oh,
there was a, I just say lunch. Yeah.
Before we get to the new stuff, Amy, there are a couple of activities that do not have funding tied to them that the staff is recommending that we discontinue.
okay,
So if we want to go back, I've started them. The first one is 2.1.2.
2.1.
okay, so that's currently the Department of Education does not provide sexual education for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Each individual school district decides on what information, if any, will be provided in sexual education. This type of training is not a requirement of school systems in Louisiana. And so
Okay.
the item was for us to advocate that the Department of Education provide appropriate accessible sexual education to high school students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So the staff is recommending this activity, recommends discontinuing this activity at this capacity. If the council is interested in continuing this initiative, it is recommended a contract to be entered with an outside entity that can develop an educational program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and offer these trainings statewide, like a voluntary basis outside of school settings. Funding would need to be allotted for this initiative.
Hey, say that.
So it seems like the Board of Education can't mandate this to be available, like it's not even mandated for any kids in the state. And so what they're saying is if you want to reach those high school age kids about appropriate sexual education, then it would have to be done like through an outside source that then we'd have to somehow reach out to families of kids that are high school age to access that type of training. But you can discontinue it. You don't, it's whatever we.
Well, where is that? You should put it. Yeah, we need discontinue that.
Okay, you said discontinue?
I mean, that's what y'all.
So what the staff are recommending are that if you want to keep this activity in some form, we need to change it because we've discussed it with the Department of Ed. We've read the law that governs sexual education in school. And it's not up to the Department of Ed. Every individual school district has to make that decision. So it is unlikely that we would be able to do that. There are a lot of school districts. It would require a curriculum to be built and then a lot of local advocacy for it to happen. So it's doubtful we could make it widespread.
So we not, I'm in the country, we not funding this.
Well, currently we're not funding anything. This was just about advocacy and finding out what we could do at that stage. But if you wanted to do something about it and you wanted for there to be sexual education training available to high schoolers with developmental disabilities, then the council might want to consider changing the activity so that we contract with somebody who can develop a curriculum and put on these trainings and reach out to high school age, families of.
They never got a bunch of adults offering sex ed to kids.
Well, I think last year, just to give you some background, the planning committee, one of the members on the committee is a teacher. She was a teacher and she just felt like this was really important. She felt like talking to students, high school age students about sexual education was really important. Schools, LDOE doesn't offer anything.
Right.
But most school systems do offer something
No,
for
because
the regular ed high school.
So, never mind.
We don't have to do anything right now. If you guys don't feel like really passionate about it, we could just leave it there and then go through the next steps and then see if we want to go back to it.
I can highlight it. We can go back to it if you guys want.
that's what I'm thinking, no. I think it's unnecessary with this. I mean, we shouldn't even have to go back on it, but damn it, I think that. This is not unnecessary with it. I mean, cause I look at the fact is, and I'm speaking truth for y'all, I'm gonna just speak. Some kids that's got disabilities wouldn't, and not getting out, well, they wouldn't understand this no way, and then you're looking at, you might be, hurting some parents, but this here, they wanna get taught the basis, and then we jump to.
So I can give you an example. I had a mean, I think this is really about, sometimes about our with disabilities are oftentimes victimized of sexual assault. So if they understand, they understand their body and understand sexuality and understand that people shouldn't be touching certain parts of their body. And also, sometimes our kids, when they go to puberty, like any other kid, they want to act in a certain way, and they don't have that understanding that that's not socially appropriate to act a certain way. And so they need to understand like that, yeah, it's okay to feel this way. It's fine, it's perfectly normal, but you can't do it in the classroom, you know, that type of thing. So I think that's what this really is about. Yeah.
Okay.
They do this at the UL Life program. Every semester with all the kids, they have like these classes, they break them up into male and female. And it has been wonderful for that college age population of kids that have developmental disabilities. So.
Would you explaining it that way
Mhm.
is understanding?
Different, way different
And
than what I was.
Yeah, so what do we?
So,
She's so. She's so. It is. Yeah, it's a problem.
Okay, I want to go back to that.
so when we do go back to it, can we maybe reword it?
Yeah, we can reword it.
Okay.
Want to go to the next one?
Yeah, it's 2.3.1. Okay, so while we're not recommending to discontinue, we are recommending that the committee consider language changes to that particular activity.
So this one is conduct research and collaborate with the Department of Health to address accessible education materials on women's health topics. And so the council will collaborate with the Office of Women Health and Community Health. This office was created last year. And the goal is to provide agency-wide focus on women's health outcome through policy, education, evidence-based practices, programs, and services. So now the council staff will communicate to establish such collaboration. And so the staff recommends continuing this activity, but remove the research requirement as the newly developed state agency will provide necessary research. Oh, okay. I said conduct research and collaborate. So we just want to collaborate. So take out the first three words. Yeah. Y'all got enough to do then. Conducting research. Okay. So is everybody good with that change? The wording change. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is 3.1.3.
So that is to advocate for support structure in school system that assures adequate understanding and skill to develop and implement IEPs and increased infrastructure of training and technical assistance provided to parents and schools simultaneously. Okay, that's different. So council staff continues to attend Betsy, the Advisory Council on Student Behavior and Discipline, and other education boards, councils, and task force that makes recommendations and decisions about that impact students with disabilities. And then Amy talks with the Executive Director for Diverse Learning at the Department of Education, Meredith Jordan, does that monthly. If the activity is continued, staff needs more guidance and specific plan To accomplish this goal, a suggestion may be to contract with a national trainer to offer statewide training and or have materials developed that can be provided to students with disabilities and their families.
I get 1.1.3.
3.1.3, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I don't know that I really understand.
Yeah, I mean, what type, I guess, what does that look like? What type of material?
Increased infrastructure, training and technical assistance.
You're talking about the activity itself, the wording of the activity? Is that what you're asking about?
I guess.
That's what we're asking, like, we need more guidance on how to accomplish this particular activity, because, yeah, the wording is very,
Because it's, to me, it sounds like this understanding and the skill to development and implement the IEPs. That's what I understand. But that's families helping families. That's a big thing that they do. Assist with IEPs and teaching those families.
Correct. And like, what I feel like this is trying to do is, and it was something that was at the seat meeting, or actually, was proxy at the last, for someone at the last seat meeting, and they were going over the, was it the plan that the IDEA
yeah, grant application.
grant application, and like they had some good ideas for like technical assistance and some training. It seemed like they could potentially be good, but my point was like they had like the monitoring was like, I don't know, $250,000 monitoring across the state. That wouldn't even hire maybe 3 people. And so I feel like the laws already exist that this should be happening. They should have understanding. I mean, teachers should know how to develop and implement IEPs. The school system should be making sure that's done effectively. They should be coordinating with families, should be integral parts. But if nobody's monitoring, that's the real problem. So I don't know if that gets to the point of this, but that's where the real hole is at. It's like the laws exist that this should be happening. It's not happening because nobody's holding the people responsible that should be. Right. So yeah, we're not doing oversight, and not in a punitive way, like monitoring to give reinforcements and support where you see there's weakness in what's going on in those districts. So I don't know if that answers the question or solves the problem we're trying to solve, but
They
Okay.
do sometimes, I mean, they do have the support structure in the school systems to be able to direct those families if the family doesn't understand what that IEP means or what, their rights are.
so maybe that's what this should be, is that we are advocating for increased monitoring in our schools. With that,
But then I don't know.
Increase monitoring of what? Like they're following the rules?
it used to exist years ago, but there were monitoring teams that would go to districts and monitor if they're, yeah.
But who monitor what? That they're.
Yeah, like go pull out certain number of IEPs, look at their policy, look at all the different, they might go in and just look at, okay, your development of IEPs, or is that right? Or you look at your test. They would go out and just pull certain things, like you'd monitor it like a quality assurance type thing. And they would have a team of people that would go and do that. And then if you see that there's a weakness, then they tap into all those trainings and other opportunities that they had in that IEP, the IDEA grant application. They had some like really good type of trainings. But districts aren't going to send their people to it until like you kind of force them to say, you have a problem, you better access what we're offering. Like that's the way I see it. And you might have some districts or some people that are gonna do it on their own. But a lot of them, they're not gonna do it. If they don't have to do it, they're not gonna do it. So
But is there like a rule that said they have to do it?
I mean, there's laws that they're supposed to follow, but if nobody goes in. Yeah, nobody's enforcing the law.
Well, then the wording on that is all wrong, if that's it.
Well, I think what this was probably trying to get to. Trying to solve something. I don't know.
The wording's still wrong if you're trying to solve something, because
I don't think they were trying to solve the monitoring. I'm saying like, I think that's the overarching thing. That's why you don't have adequate understanding and development of the IEPs.
We talking about IEP, huh?
So have we developed like a form or something to monitor all of this stuff that we're asking for? Have we developed some way to monitor everything?
No, we have.
Not. Okay.
This is monitoring mandated. That's mandated that the IDEA whatever they're monitoring mandate is mandated by the IDEA law. Is that right?
I mean, what does the staff think about that? Like, if we would change it to advocate for increased monitoring. I'm not sure of our school districts. I'm sure there's other words that need to be in there. Would that be appropriate?
Again, who will we advocate? The Department of Education?
Yes, the Department of Education that needs to have that. Build up that system that they used to have, I think, in doing those monitorings regularly of our school district. Like I said, all they had, all of a sudden it was like $240, $140,000. 3 people are not gonna even be able to, if every school district, they do their own self-assessment, that's all 3 people will be able to do is to go through and check up the paperwork that people doing self-assessment. That's not going in and actually doing some monitoring and that type of thing. Yeah.
All of it needs to be audited.
Yeah.
Or some.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm sorry. I don't know if this came up at this meeting, but I think part of the problem is the number of staff that they have. So I know Meredith has mentioned like a couple of times that they only have 10 people, right?
Yeah,
It's like, no,
So they don't really have the-
that goes to the heart of it though, like that be part of the advocate. If they don't have the staff, then that's what they need to do. They don't have more staff. But the monitoring used to be, you might have districts would go to each other's district. Like you had on the team, you had a families helping families person that was on the team. You had somebody from another district that, okay, you come in and monitor my district. I go in and monitor your district. Like they had that's my recollection of it years ago. So it wasn't just LDE staff. They built this kind of like teams that would agree to go in and give feedback. And not necessarily being punitive, just being helping to assess where your needs are.
I went to Bessie 2 days ago and Meredith gave a presentation where they did talk about monitoring. And I know that they monitor, or from what they said or what she reported, they monitor 2 different types of districts more closely. One of them, I want to say, was interventions needed and then urgent interventions needed. And she did say that within a certain year of them monitoring, it does kind of shuffle out and a new one gets put in. And it's not necessarily that they're doing something wrong. It's just that they might not be meeting the goals that the state has. So then they're getting monitored that year. So it does kind of cycle through, but I'm not sure if it's the same thing that y'all are talking about, like monitoring the whole school system for this.
they definitely don't have the capacity that they used to have at all. I mean, it's
No.
a fraction. So, I mean, I just feel like monitoring would cover so many of our issues. If our IEPs are not adequately, done correctly. If we have issues of a district not complying with, cameras in the classroom laws, any type of issue that we bring up, a monitoring system, the capacity to monitor could address any issue. Instructions, testing, it could do all of that. It's kind of an overarching. So,
I think it needs to be reworded.
yeah, completely, it'd be completely changed. It's a completely
Yeah, I
different
mean, I
thing.
think advocating for additional monitoring staff is fine on this level. We probably won't see much change until we bring it to a legislative advocacy level, because it's gonna require money to put in more positions. And
So if we put it here, would that not be, if we put advocate for whatever, monitoring, whatever other adjectives we need to put there, would that mean, wouldn't it mean that we would advocate to Bessie, Department of Education, to the legislature, wherever advocacy needs to occur?
yeah, but what it doesn't do is put it on the council's legislative advocacy agenda as a priority. So next year, when we're making priorities, somebody's gonna motion for that.
But if it's in our plan, it wouldn't?
That's not typically how it's.
Not legislatively, yeah. We can go to we can go to Bessie, we can go to those types of advisory councils and advocate for them to increase the monitoring, just like you did at the seat meeting at the last one. But I think what Amy's saying is that she doesn't think there's gonna be change just from that. She thinks that,
You have to
We'll
force
have to
some by
force
legislation.
We'll have to force money.
and yeah, and fund it.
Well, but my contention is that, what was it, the IDEA,
Grant application.
grant application, that's where the money is federal dollars that they could,
Allocate.
that's not the legislature,
Yeah.
like that, they could have done that there, I guess they still can. So yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
fine with that, so if we put it here,
Yeah, let's
Then
make
we
the
can-
change and see how far we get. And then if it comes down to, we need to try to get additional dollars in that budget to address that. Next.
are y'all okay with that? What do y'all think about it?
I mean,
Do y'all wanna work on language now?
I just
Okay.
want to make sure everybody feels okay with that.
yeah, I mean,
Cool. Okay, so we can work on new language. So it would be advocate for,
Adequate monitoring of local school districts, or I guess IDEA or what were
No, I mean, I'm thinking it would be more like the local school districts and their IEP.
but you're saying more than IEPs, you're saying everything,
Yeah.
monitor everything, cameras and, just everything.
But we're advocating, advocate for the Department of Education to, it should be advocate for LDE to
To perform adequate monitoring.
yeah,
I would say maybe rethink adequate, because how do you define adequate?
yeah.
Well,
under the-
right.
Perform monitoring.
Mhm.
We say to perform ongoing monitoring of local school districts to ensure compliance with and whatever it is you want to accomplish.
Local school districts
To-
compliance.
To ensure compliance with, you could say special education laws, or you could say
All special
all
education.
special education laws, rules, right, however you want to word it to encompass everything that you're talking about.
Education laws.
Yeah, I mean, you could say laws and policies, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might be able to word it a little bit better, but I think that
Encompasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
okay, is everybody okay with that? All right.
The next one is 3.2.2.
Okay. That's to advocate for employment support professionals to complete high quality professional development, specifically on benefits planning services for the improvement of service provisions for and employment outcomes. So LRS currently has in-house community partner work incentives, counselors. And so I'm gonna call that what, CWIC? Is that what they call it? To assist individuals with their SSI and SSDI benefits. Lighthouse for the Blind and the LSU Human Development Center also have the WIPA programs, which is Work Incentives Planning Assistance. LRS has informed the council of the difficulty LRS and Department of Children and Family Service have experienced with hiring and retaining rehabilitation counselors and disability determination examiners, respectively. The council's Education and Employment Committee wrote a letter to the Director of State Civil Service imploring him to review the current pay scales based on the current labor market, with strong consideration for an increase in starting pay and range for entry-level positions. So the staff recommends discontinuing this activity as the services currently exist. Additionally, this issue is not the issue is not that employment support professionals are not trained, but rather the difficulty of hiring and retaining these professionals. Okay, so there's just a recommendation to discontinue this. Are you guys okay with that? Any questions about it?
All right, okay.
With it, if the services already exist, then
Yeah, so they're not gonna not do it.
yeah, it already
Alright.
exists, so we don't need to.
Okay, all right.
Everybody's okay with discontinuing it?
Mhm.
Okay.
The next one is 3.2.3, the next one.
Okay, so that's to ensure potential employers have access to information about financial incentives to hire unserved and underserved populations, including people with the most substantial employment support needs in competitive, integrated, individualized employment. So this activity, the employment seminars covered financial incentives available to employers that hire unserved and underserved populations. There are videos on the council's YouTube page for the public to access. And also there's additional information in our partner agencies, the council's sister agencies, I should say, Disability Rights Louisiana and the LSU Human Development Center. So the staff recommends discontinuing this activity. Any opposition to discontinuing this?
So what they basically mean on that?
So basically for employers to be able to know that there's some resources, like LRS has some programs. Also there's some just workforce, like there's some tax credits you can get for hiring people who have disabilities, people who have SNAP benefits, people who veterans, there's this whole tax credits. So I think that's kind of all incorporated that employers, it's incentivizing them to hire people who are low income, people with disabilities, people who are veterans. And so I think that was the goal of this. to make sure employers knew that these incentives existed. And what this is saying is that we've done the videos and our sister agencies have these resources as well, ongoing.
Okay. So that's, if I'm wrong, ma'am, you can correct me, but that's basically like, if this wasn't in place, that's kind of forcing people to hire people with disabilities.
No, it's just like if you hire someone, I can give you an example. So like whenever I was a director for a provider agency, many of our direct support workers, they may have gotten SNAP benefits.
Right.
You fill out a form and you can get a 2,500 tax credit, the business, for hiring someone who receives tax benefits and keeping them employed for a certain amount of time. Like that's an incentive to help a business, want to hire people who and it's also to help people to get out of poverty. You also had I remember for like a veteran who had a disabled veteran who might've been getting SNAP benefits, it was like, I don't know, $9,000. So like, it's not forcing anybody, it's incentivizing them to say, hey, you can get some more financial incentives to hire this person.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. That's it?
Yeah,
Well, wait.
Oh, yeah, do you want to get rid, you
Yeah,
want to
is everybody
discontinue it?
yeah, we're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought. Okay, so we'll get rid of that one.
And then the next one.
Okay.
2.4.
So this is to share the benefits planning services to a variety of agencies and stakeholders. There are several agencies that provide this information about benefits planning. So you have the Lighthouse for the Blind, LRS, Disability Rights Louisiana, and the LSU Human Development Center. So the staff recommends discontinuing this activity. Are y'all okay with discontinuing it? Okay. Wait, y'all okay with discontinuing? Libby, Renata,
Nicole.
Eric? Okay, Nicole, you have a,
I have a question. Are we discontinuing it? Why? Is it met? Like, is it already met? Like, we've already done it and all of that good stuff?
probably a duplication of
Mhm.
effort.
Okay.
I mean, because all of those other agencies that are listed, they're already sharing the information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the council's not gonna
Get it.
provide that information. It's
Right.
just not gonna be something that's in the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all okay with that?
It's okay that this, I mean, yeah,
No,
Okay, then the next
So
one.
then the next one is 3.2.6.
Okay. Conduct research to, oh, nobody wants to conduct research.
Never on the council heard of the Medicaid buy-in program. I mean, that doesn't mean anything.
that's what I said, what is it? Tried to look it up.
So conduct research to examine the effectiveness and advocate to support efforts of the Louisiana Medicaid buy-in program. Staff has researched the Medicaid buy-in program, including income rates for eligibility, and staff plan to advocate for Medicaid to send out more information to individuals with disabilities and their families about the program. And the staff recommends discontinuing this activity for the year.
So the buy-in program is like, if you are ineligible for Medicaid, you can pay a certain amount of money, you buy into it and get the insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But we don't have that in Louisiana.
No.
Didn't Tepper take
But Tepper's for kids.
Yeah.
This is for adults.
See, no, we still have it because I researched it.
Oh,
And I
okay.
researched the income eligibility criteria. I don't have
But
it
then why
on me,
would
so I
they
don't
get
have
denied if they meant?
well, we need,
It was discontinued for a time, so they must have
Yeah, I mean, it's on Medicaid's website, and so I was able to find out some information about it, but,
You heard what she said?
From 2011.
The website's out.
oh, is it? I didn't look at the date on it, sure, but it seems like it was still active from what I could tell.
Well, the details of it, but like it was, I knew like during the past governor, they shut that
Yeah.
down. But then I remember because of Medicaid expansion, like there was some issue, like maybe you don't necessarily need Medicaid buy-in. Because it was like bad whenever they cut it under the Jindal administration. Then it was like, okay, we need to get it back. But then it was like, wait, because of Medicaid expansion, that's covering a whole larger population of people. So like, I forgot all the details of it.
That was
But
for adult.
no,
Okay.
no.
Oh,
But you're saying it exists now.
From the website that I looked on, it still exists.
Okay, so maybe we can get our Medicaid, whoever's the Medicaid person and just make sure. I thought it was,
I try to look it up.
and I don't know of anybody who's using it. It's basically for someone who has like really high support needs, but they make really good income.
Okay.
So they, you know, they can't maybe not be able to access, like they need Medicaid services because they're high needs, but they make too much to qualify for any other, even the waiver or, you know, Medicaid expansion. So this gives them an opportunity to have that insurance that they need.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pay a premium, like
Okay,
you do, you know.
okay, but in a discounted.
I mean, I don't know. the
Okay.
rates.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big deal before we had Medicaid expansion and that type of thing, but. Okay. So we're okay with discontinuing that?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, is that all the ones we need to discontinue?
That's the last activity.
Okay, so what's our next thing?
So I think Amy wanted you guys to look at the recommendations from the standing committees again. Because at this point, we're gonna have to go back and add activities because you guys did discontinue things that had funding allocated to it.
I would like to know. Yeah.
There was this was my question earlier, but other than Wyoming, did any other contractors request more funding?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not specifically, I mean, I think I can only speak for the two that I had. If you
Right.
Give them more funding, they will do more.
I
They
mean,
didn't
there was
specifically ask.
oh, I'm gonna boost you, cause
Yeah.
no, I'm good.
no, I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing that did. Besides,
And to be clear, just because you took activities away, doesn't mean you have to add activities. You just have to figure out what to do with the money you have left over.
Right.
You can increase funding or you can create new activities. We don't have like a set number of activities you have to have necessarily.
Yeah.
Whatever those dollars are, we have to figure out what to do with it.
So if you guys want to go back to the standing committee recommendation, we can start there.
So just, I mean, I'm calculating that we have like, if we keep the dollar amounts, we have 147,000. That's
Yeah.
right? That's right. So good.
How much, Bambi?
147,000.
Like that was a profession.
I know. I almost could be a math teacher.
Another way.
Okay, so we'll go back to the committee's recommendations. And just so you know, the number under self-determination, community inclusion, number 3, we already said we were gonna do those. So, and then under the number 2 item, we are discontinuing those, right?
We'll disseminate the
Yeah.
videos that we already have.
So the only new thing was to establish, establish an initiative to educate and train individuals with intellectual, and developmental disabilities on voting awareness. So.
I think it's more like a goal, and goals cannot be altered in a yearly planning. Correct.
I mean, I feel like it would fit under one.
Okay. All right.
So would that look like contracting with an entity that would develop a training to help people with intellectual and developmental disabilities know their rights?
Yes, that would be the clarity that we would need.
To those,
Yeah.
As I recall, we didn't get that much clarity from the committee on what you wanted this to look like.
I know I recommended that, and I did not give any clarity because I didn't know what it was gonna look like, but I thought that HCR 14 committee would have talked, like, introduced more like what it was like for people with disabilities at voting polls, and then I was confused as to how everything worked. Like, who do we, like, when we need help voting, who do we get the information from? And that's when I thought that, like, this kind of training would be like helpful to people with disabilities, and something that maybe our council could provide, but as to what it looks like, I have no other information for y'all.
Well, I think that maybe Bambi's suggestion of like the rights is a good place to start, because that gives the background knowledge, and then there can be information about, if you see something that's not right, who you should contact. And then could maybe give some resources about how you could go about troubleshooting some issues, assuming the Secretary of State's office is respondent.
I mean, we have the legislation right now. You guys know that from you and Eric served on the task force, the disability voting task force, and now we have legislation by Representative Willard that's hopefully gonna pass, because it was the unanimous items is in his bill that everybody, the Secretary of State's office and disability advocates, the things that they wanted to see happen, that's in that bill. So hopefully if that passes, I mean, I see the timing is really good to do something like this, because we would have more access in that bill. It's having the Secretary of State having an ADA coordinator. That's a big deal.
Resources to get.
Yeah.
That weren't available.
I do have a question though for Tori.
Sure.
With disability rights. You guys do some things around voting. I just wonder if it's a duplicate of services. Can you come to the table and answer? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I did look at him a while ago and say, kind of give an eye that I'm.
And so for voting stuff, directly, what we do during most election days, not all, because frankly, Louisiana has a lot of elections and we can't staff them all. We do a hotline that you can call in if they experience any voting accessibility issues at polling places. We run that on election day. Of course, our intake number is always available during early voting too, but we actually have it staffed on election day Saturdays to try and promote that as much as possible. But of course, it's hard to get the information out as much as we'd like. We also do polling place inspections. We try and again, we suspended them a bit during the pandemic and the shutdowns because we just were not comfortable sending people into polling places. But we resumed them and we use the ADA guidelines to inspect whether or not polling places are in compliance with the ADA. So things like doors being accessible, pressure required to open a door, ramps being present, ramps being the proper configuration, hallways being wide enough, people being able to turn a chair around inside a hallway, voting machines being turned on. There's a whole big, thick ADA guide that we look at. We send people out to inspect polling places and find issues. And if we do find issues, we try and local election officials. Sometimes on the day of the election, sometimes we can just afterward try and correct things. Sometimes it takes numerous times to correct something. A lot of times it's something as simple as signage, which is like they're just simply accessible signage there showing people where accessible entrances. Sometimes, oddly, some places still don't have accessible parking. And even when it's a public school, sometimes they might just, and that may be because they just have only a certain part of the building they're using for the polling place, and that part of the building doesn't have accessible parking, so they need to have temporary parking. So we have to work with officials to remedy things like that. And then we do a lot of voting rights advocacy at the Capitol. So it's kind of three things. It's a hotline for people to call if they experience any accessibility issues. It is inspecting polling places and voting rights advocacy at the Capitol.
So I don't think this would be a duplication of what they do.
Right.
It doesn't. Yeah. So do y'all like that activity? Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think it's good if we get this legislation passed, and then we are teaching our people of how to hold everyone accountable for doing what's in the law, right? And following what's in the law. Which, as y'all know, is important. So do we have to word it in a certain way, or are you?
Yeah, we will need to word the activity. We're not gonna number it now. We're gonna have to attach a number later.
Okay.
I'm assuming it would be similar to like the supported decision-making wording, the YLF wording right there, provide financial support. And then however else you got, whatever else.
So
you
like
guys want.
provide technical assistance and training opportunities designed to. I don't know. With the. To raise awareness of voting accessibility. I don't know if that's right.
Or if you look at the, I was gonna say, if you look at the recommendation, it says establish an initiative to educate and train individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities on voting awareness. Yeah, I'm gonna use
That's
that.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Voting awareness, rights, and accessibility. So it's not just like you can vote. I think we know, but you have rights and and accessibility is a big part of it. Vote, well, you have it voting awareness, comma, rights and accessibility. Okay,
And now we need to attach a dollar amount to it.
and we have how much?
We have 147,000.
If we vote, so it's 147,000.
I guess that'll end this meeting a little early. Yeah.
So can we just go through and see what other activities, and then we better divide that money?
Yeah.
Later. Okay. So what other, okay, so that covers everything from the Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee, right? So under education, there was a recommendation to add an activity to the contract with an entity that could assist with the building the capacity for advocacy regarding education and employment.
Can someone explain, like, that seems very broad.
It is.
Okay.
I mean, if you can remember, like, well, the thought behind this is, if you can remember years ago, we had a staff person here that had a lot of knowledge about education and advocacy. And, it kind of, we had turnover, and we need that capacity, someone who really understands education policies and practices and understands that kind of legislative process and policy process that could help the council and the everyone, the whole community, to be able to build up that capacity again, because we're really, really struggling in education in our state, and we need that advocacy. We need a really strong advocacy network. So that was the idea behind it.
Okay.
And I don't think it'd be long-term, because it is about like capacity building. So if you have somebody that has that really strong background, then the staff and council members should be able to learn that and then be able to take that on going forward. Am I articulating it correctly? What would be the language for that?
I'm looking at you. I don't know. I'm sure we provide financial support again, provide financial support for what though? Like, how would you guys want to word it? To build capacity, I don't know.
We provide financial support to build capacity for advocacy regarding education and employment.
Damn, there you go. Be written out for you. What's it gonna take?
I think I had, well, for objective 3.1, it's mostly, it's dealing with education. But then objective 3.2 is dealing with employment. And so I think the reason why it's like that on the recommendations, that I didn't know we were gonna need to have it in both spots. Because objective 3.1 is only dealing with education. Objective 3.2 is dealing with employment. So if we're gonna do education and employment, do we need to have it in two separate places?
I would think so.
That's a technical. That's
Yeah,
Amy.
it would have
That's
to
a
be in two,
federal question.
it would have to be in two separate places. I'm trying to figure out how we do it if you just want one person who just. Because you're almost talking about assigning two different rate or two different funding.
I mean, technically, it could be two different goals,
I mean,
and one entity could have both.
Right.
Wait,
You could have
the-
two different.
current plan is written though for. I mean, could you just add an objective and lump this under there?
You can't add any objectives. The
Oh,
goals and
that's true.
objectives are set.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily have to split it in multiple areas, but.
So would this,
I don't know, like, I mean, is that a technical question that we need to ask you, or I don't know.
would this entail hiring a new staff member? Or what is the goal? Literally, what, like, what are we trying to? Like, what are we trying to do by
Funding it,
yeah,
like, are we trying to hire another staff member? Would
like,
be contracting out?
what is the, like, end goal, like?
So Bambi might be able to answer the end goal question better, but it's my understanding that it's having an additional set of eyes who's very familiar, most specifically with the education system, who can really look at things that are coming up in meetings where maybe we need to have a stronger DD community presence for this thing at
Okay,
some meeting, because Department of Ed meetings are not well advertised. They wait till the last minute to put it on an agenda. If you're not like in the know, then you don't know. Because they are not very well publicized.
I think the other part of it is that you don't. You have to have a level of understanding of educational issues to realize, oh, this is an agenda item and it might look generic to anybody else, but someone else will know, oh no, that has a big implication on kids with disabilities. Or they're putting this out there, they need to include kids with disabilities. They may be thinking about those students with disabilities and you know, they're saying they want to give an incentive to high school science teachers. If y'all saying that, so people need to be there. They would be giving incentives to special education teachers, you know, so that's the type of thing. You need somebody who really just has a lot of, you know, in-depth understanding of it. And yeah, that's the idea behind it. And it's really too much for the staff to be able to do with everything.
simple solution in my simple mind is to just funding the thing, whatever staff member to trainings on idea in a seat in blah, but I mean, like, again, our state plan isn't about staff members, so.
It wouldn't be a staff member, be someone that we contracted with that had the expertise. Yeah,
Okay,
but the hope would be that our staff could build that capacity to have that same type of expertise and know to look for those things that maybe someone who already has that expertise right now. And that's how we'd be building capacity.
okay,
Through that. That makes sense.
okay.
Okay. And that's all from our committees. Was there any other ideas that we want to put into the plan? Staff, do y'all have any outside? Anything that we've received from the public that we want to include? Or we all want to not include, provide for consideration?
I received an idea from the Arc of Louisiana that is about changing health outcomes for people with disabilities and co-occurring behavioral conditions.
Okay.
With the goal being to train individuals, their families and caregivers on how to navigate all three systems. So the behavioral health system, the developmental disability system, and the Medicaid and or managed.
Okay, and so that would be done through what? Developing resources, through training?
Develop and provide training across the state via in-person Zoom to individuals with co-occurring conditions, their families and caregivers. Provide technical assistance and resources that are available to them. Provide opportunities for individuals with co-occurring conditions, their families and their caregivers to meet with State Department staff and policymakers to share critical issues and discuss what's needed to better support.
Okay. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
One more time and email us.
So basically, people who have developmental disabilities, but also have behavioral health needs, that this would be able to help them to be able to navigate through the system.
What you mean by that when you say navigate?
Like be able to know where to get the support they need, which is very difficult. You probably, I think everybody knows somebody who, like, where do you go if you have a developmental disability and you have a behavioral health need? Like, oftentimes you can't, the regular providers of services won't see you because you have both of those diagnoses.
Okay. Okay. I got you. What we trying to do with it?
The proposal was for the Arc of Louisiana to provide training across the state and give people resources that are available to them and help them learn how to navigate through the three different systems.
Are we trying to add that?
Right, you could add it as an activity if the committee wanted to.
When you say three systems, what do you mean?
The developmental disability system, the behavioral health system, and then the Medicaid or managed care.
Okay.
Yes, I think that the more stuff that we put out there that can help somebody, I think it would be good to add.
Okay, so where
would
would we
that
add
be-
that in the plan?
Would that be in the budget too, or would it just be added in the budget?
Let's wake up, y'all. That was y'all wake up sound.
Would that be added in the budget or we just add it?
Well, this particular proposal would be one you'd have to fund because they're talking about doing training.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd be in judges.
And just remember, I have 2.1.2 highlighted in case you guys wanted to do something different with that. And we suggested like maybe contracting with a trainer or someone who could develop training materials for high school age students. Education.
I was thinking that this would be like a lower version of what Team Dynamics is for us, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Focus on minors instead of.
yeah,
Oh, but before we get there, let's go back to the other one, right? Yeah.
So it's
I thought you said so.
Provide funding for training. Is that training for, to navigate? Financial support for. Training.
I mean, we really could probably just take this.
Come on.
I was watching type too. It's all three systems. I mean, I don't know if that's the right wording we should have. I
I
mean,
think we should tweak that wording.
to navigate the,
Developmental disability, behavioral health and Medicaid systems. Medicaid managed care systems.
Medicaid.
/ managed care.
I mean, one thing to consider here, I mean, we do contract with FHF centers to do these things, like, not necessarily do that specifically, but help individuals and families when they come into this situation to help them navigate. That's part of the core services that we ask our centers to do. So I don't know Fed wise, or, well, they don't worry about FHF center contracts for our federal reporting, right? So they may not see any issues there if we have two very similar projects.
I mean, I see this as training, and I see maybe the Family Help and Family Centers is like the practical,
Right.
ongoing technical assistance and support.
I see workshops there.
Huh?
I mean, some do workshops that are similar.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak on their behalf, but just reading it, I'm wondering, I just want to make sure we don't get in any sort of
Yeah.
conundrum with, we're contracting with one to basically help guide parents through these situations or individuals through these situations, and then contract with another to do a training on it.
Okay.
But I don't know. That's why I'm bringing, I can't say either way. I was just curious.
Would having that contract limit the FHF center's ability to hold those workshops?
No, and I mean, in our FHF contracts, we don't say specifically that training has to occur. So there's not a cross, and they could certainly do that training. And if we would contract with someone to do this training, they could do it as well. It doesn't prohibit anyone from doing it. I was just curious about. It seems kind of like a similar thing. But
Why would it
maybe
be
not.
our workers take care of this? I mean, it's always duplicate.
I mean, that would be a different discussion. Then we'd have to update a contract with centers to incorporate this. But so then you'd look at updated deliverables, updated funding, et cetera.
I mean, I think the issue is that, and I think part of it is that we don't have a system that has the capacity to serve, like that's part of it. But to serve these people that have dual diagnosis, I should finish my sentence. But we do need training. I mean, people call me about issues, it just doesn't exist. Families call me and they have tapped into every system that we have with OCDD and behavior, and it just not there. I don't know. It's a problem. People with dual diagnoses for their behavioral health and DD is a big issue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So to say, and families and families, I mean, I love families and families, but I think we need to do more. I'm not saying it's to go with a proposal that we received from another entity or get families and families to do more or whatever, but like, it is a huge issue that, I mean, it paralyzes our families.
Right.
When you have that type of issue. Really, people can't go to work, it's just their families fall apart from that. So it's a big issue that we need to address in some kind of way.
I'm not on the
I know. But it's like, what are other states?
I was asking, but-
I don't know how
I mean, every state is different. Other states might have more of a cooperative, a crossover between their systems to help with some gaps than ours. So, do you want to move forward with this, or we're gonna table it?
I mean, I think it needs to happen. So even if it's like, we have, this comes from a proposal from the ARC, whether I could see they can maybe be able to have a outreach to maybe to other people that the Families Helping Families doesn't have, but like to work in collaboration with our Families Helping Families. I think our systems should work in collaboration to address this in some type of way. So I would say move forward. Maybe we decide change it, but that would be my suggestion.
I mean, like Bama said, I'm not cutting you off, but Ms. Bama, yeah, it's something that needs to be done, but it's the footwork of getting it basic done, but it definitely needs to be done. That again, that do break down families and it's hard. I mean, you hear families helping families all. I mean, it's just something that need to be worked on and done. And where we go from here.
Okay, so y'all in favor of adding that activity?
We don't have
Okay.
the funding now, we just don't worry about attaching.
Yeah, this will require funding.
Yeah.
And we'd have to put a dollar amount. I mean, we don't have to decide the
Yeah,
details of
doesn't
how
matter.
it's gonna,
Okay.
but we need to say, okay, this is how much training what we wanna put in the budget. Okay, so we have three, and then do we want to go back to the sex education for high school age students?
I mean, I don't see the way you worded that.
Mhm,
We got a better understanding with it.
mhm.
What is we going back on that with it? I mean, does this being put in, or is that something we trying to train somebody with, or?
Well, we did something in the past. I think it was brought up, Jill brought it up about Team Dynamics did it for adults, a sexual education type training for adults with disabilities. And so and I think it was done virtually, right?
It was both.
It was both? Okay,
It started out in person and it moved virtual during COVID.
yeah, so to do that, I mean, it just basically needs probably something like that to be modified for that high school aged.
Cause my tactic to it, once it was explained to me, I was planning to take it straight out and tell you, open my eyes up on it, cause I'm like, look, we got enough issues going on. We do have, people that's got a disability that don't know what's going on and so much is going on in the school stuff. I'm being honest, I'm being strictly honest with you guys, so much is going on and you don't know. We do have cameras in place, but some places don't have their cameras where they need to be. And I'm gonna just put it across the board. I had a child with a disability in the system and you just don't, they need much teaching on what's going on around them and what's happening. When you explain it that way, I'm like, cool, I'm for it, but at first I'm like, but yeah. There
Okay.
need to be a teaching on it.
So then we need to change that to say, provide funding for training on appropriate accessible education, right? Can we just change that?
We have to fund it.
Okay, so she's gonna word that. So now we have the sex ed, the dual diagnosis training, the education, advocacy capacity building, and the other one? No one?
So you have voting awareness training.
Oh, voting awareness, that's cool.
The teenagers, sexual education training, co-occurring disorders, and the education and employment.
Advocacy.
Spreadsheet, I'm just calling a consultant, yeah. Advocacy.
Capacity building, okay, so that's 4 things and we have $147,000.
So I think it's important to point out that
Come to the
most,
table so people can hear. You can right here.
most kids, regular education kids do start learning sex ed in middle school, like 7th, 8th grade. So I think we should provide this in the curriculum for all children starting in middle school, like around 7th, 8th grade. There are usually consent forms that go home for regular ed students. And the parents usually can opt them out, but they don't for our regular ed students. I don't think this should just be high school aged because children do start going into puberty before high school.
Okay, so middle and high school,
Yeah.
okay. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
She's the expert on students, right?
Also, would the training have to come from an outside source, or could we get this like into the curriculum for all students instead of just regular ed students?
Can you repeat the question? I don't think I understood it.
So regular ed students have sex ed already in the curriculum for them, but we should have the same thing for like all students, sped ed included. Like appropriate.
So is sex ed in the curriculum?
Yeah, it's in the for at sea.
It's like,
in
it's
middle
like health.
school.
It's a
Yeah.
health.
I want you to decide to come and do it for me.
I know.
See,
And it's not in every school district. So the law that governs sexual
Okay.
education in schools says that every school district has to make their own decision to create their own curriculum of it.
That's each school, right? They have to go to each.
Which was why our recommendation was to try to do something like this, so we could still provide the training for the kids in a way that's appropriate if they're if they and their parents want to have it. But getting it mandated within the school system all across the state is probably not gonna.
I was just thinking like accessibility wise, because like regular ed students would be able to have that in schools and so should other kids.
Well, I mean, technically, if a school district has adopted to have sex ed training, they should have it accessible, to everybody. Does that happen?
We have kids that don't live.
Right, so, yeah, they should have access to it just like any other student,
If
but,
they're missing gym class, they're missing out on help.
right,
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
If they start school and after week one don't go back out, then they're gonna miss out.
yeah. So what we're saying is it's gonna be an outside entity. It's not gonna be through the school system. It's too hard to navigate, so.
If it was presented like a team workshop or a team workshop to parents, they'd be more apt to probably engage if it was an afternoon workshop to do for your kid. Because there's such a gap in available activities for that age range.
Yeah,
And when we try to elementary school, the activities. Teens.
Yeah.
Now, how you would package it's the trick.
yeah.
Now, that was a concern with the last initiative we did. I don't remember if it was Team Dynamics that spoke about it specifically, or if it was another contractor that was doing a proposal for it at the time, but some of the concern was you're not going to get, because that was my question, if we can bring it to teens, not just adults. Some of the concerns were if you have teens, obviously the parents would have to give consent, right? And then you would want them to be separate because they're not going to feel comfortable discussing a lot of things with their parents in the room. But then if you have parents that aren't in agreement with allowing their children to be taught this information, which to be honest, that's a lot of parents out there, without them sitting in that room and listening, and then are you really going to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? Because they're not going to be comfortable engaging. There was a lot of liability issues, especially, let's face it, in a very conservative state. Some of the stuff that you talk about, they were worried about some of those things. So I think, like Mimi mentioned, the packaging is what's going to matter and how they do it. I mean, with my kids, I'm very open, but I know there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily open to those things. So it's.
From a parent perspective, I have, everybody knows I have that mom. There's a huge, and it's a ticket item at one of the hospitals for, it's like just for guys or just for girls, and it's for kids. Regular. Those are always fill out fast. It's almost popular with babies in class. I don't know if approaching it through the hospitals is the way to go, because our parents and our families we would be trying to reach aren't necessarily the same folks who would be looking for like a babysitting class or for like the for girls for the guys class. Something along those lines.
I mean, I took my kids to one. It was at a hospital, and we sat in the back of the room with them in the front, and it just didn't go well
Like
because
the
they were
GLSU period party.
interested.
So-
Packaging.
So would
We're
you,
not talking about strict necessarily like birds to bees. We're looking more at like appropriateness type things, times of everything.
So, yeah, but you still have to touch on some things. To be able to get,
We get into the more nitty gritty.
yeah,
And then we started having to worry about the whole down and all that. And that's when we get like way politicized.
yeah. Well, and we did find when we did the initiative for adults, we did have to, or it did expand into talking about pronouns and different things like that, because you have to start covering everything. So when you start getting on topic,
It's a
gotta
whole other
cover-
case. We're
yeah.
like this and trying, if we frame it to where the parents understand that we're trying to avoid problems like societal problems
Mhm.
and things that hinge on legal problems at school, like.
Yeah.
All they need is another, just send your kid home.
Right.
Or actually for that, just what happens when little boys don't. Those kinds of stuff.
You just have to get the buy-in of the parents to actually get the kids there. I think that's the big thing. And figure out what age group would be appropriate, which I think if we would submit for someone to do this, they could tell us based on their experiences, I would imagine what age group would be appropriate to handle.
so what you basically saying is being in there would not be, it's gonna be I'm not. It's gonna be hard, or is it?
Oh, I don't really know. I just know from experience when we've done this for adults in the past, they didn't do minors for those reasons that we were talking about. Just, there's a lot of liability. It's a very touchy subject whenever it comes to.
Well, Mr. Britton, what if
Parents.
somebody doesn't want to talk that, like, when I went to school in New York, I was raped by assaulted.
God.
What's what we're trying to avoid with this.
Right.
Like,
Because you can't trust everybody, what if you're gonna come out?
But, and I mean, this activity in particular, they're not talking about doing it in the school, so you would have to be in agreement that you would participate in this and register to go to this. It wouldn't be something that's forced on anyone to participate.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 4 activities, guys, and we have $147,000 left in the budget. So we have to decide, do we want to do all these 4 new activities? How much dollars do we want to appropriate to it? We can also make adjustments to. Yeah, I'm gonna wait.
I have a question.
Okay,
So with this. I'm just talking more. I think we shouldn't even put this in.
don't want to do this activity?
I don't think we need to put this in there. Cause, and with me saying this, it's gonna draw a lot of concerns with certain parents. And I think we'll be billing things. And this is just my opinion. I think we're gonna be billing things that we might not even get a touch on this subject at all. And it's not reaching where we wanted to reach with kids. I don't think it need to be.
So you just want to table this one, the one about the sex education? And that's okay, because we have to stay within a budget, so we have to prioritize. We can't do everything.
No, I know I got some people that gotta agree. I personally think we should table it. Now, I don't know how they feel, but I'm personally think we should table this.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's important, we know the necessity of it, but because we don't know what it's gonna look like and how what we really want from it. So maybe, yeah, I would not
Okay.
say we can't discuss later.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, let's do some research.
Yeah. Want to just take it off?
Yes,
Yeah, let's take it off.
I think we should.
But you did a great job of drafting that. Thank you.
Remember that word screenshot, so you ready to get it back.
I mean, I'm sorry that you worded it and
Yeah.
Let's save it.
I think we should table it.
Y'all wanna table it and not delete it? Y'all wanna come back and
So
talk?
we need to delete it. and-
Okay, because we don't know what we dealing with, boy, when we
Approach something.
approach something like.
Yeah. And the other 3 activities we want to add, I mean, like I said, voting, that's like, we have like a momentum.
We need that.
Yeah, we have the momentum going into it, the dual diagnosis, we know that's a critical need. And then what was the other one? The education, that's a critical need.
Right.
So that's 3 things, and we have $147,000 between those 3 activities. Now, we can also shift money from some of the things that we talked about earlier. So that's an option too. And I'm looking at the different trainings that we have done, like it's anywhere between the employment seminars were 39,000, the emergency prep was 50,000, the first responders was 80,000. So y'all can kind of see kind of the cost of doing you know, contracting with an entity to do trainings. The staff, do y'all have any recommendations?
I don't know how much this will help you, but I would say, plan out how much you want to devote to the education and employment advocacy capacity building first. And then your trainings, you can do after, because trainings are, we can reduce the number of trainings we have to fit a budgeted amount. And that just might be a little bit more difficult with somebody who the expectation is that they spend a pretty good amount of time in education.
Yeah. So we know with the dual diagnosis, we could, and we know we have families, some families that does some compartment, some part of it. So maybe we can make that like it is maybe an additional type add-on outreach type thing. Like we kind of like more building capacity of understanding how to navigate the system, right?
I thought that was gonna be the training.
Right, but what I'm saying is we already kind of have Families Helping Families does do that in their capacity for which they're funding.
You're saying just adding the training on top of what. our
Right,
students already-
right.
Gotcha.
So we already have some, we're addressing it in some way. We just feel like we need to address it
Do
more.
And then how
Right.
much would it,
How much would that
cost?
be?
Which may, I don't, was that in their proposal? Did they say how much?
I don't think there was. No. It didn't have a cost.
I don't know if it helps, but they did the supported decision making and that was 50,000. I don't know if that's an appropriate number to consider or not. For that training, although I guess y'all are on. Wait, have y'all moved back to the arts training or are we still on this?
We're on this. So Amy's suggestion was to figure out how much they wanted
Gotcha,
to allocate for this first and then go back to the training
gotcha.
activity.
But that was just my suggestion. Whatever you do is how you do it. You're splitting the funds out.
Well, you're right, if you're gonna hire someone, I don't get people.
Yeah. And yeah, there'd be someone with high expertise, like it's a.
Yeah.
How about if we did like 87,000 for that, and then that leaves us with 60,000 for the other two? I'm just throwing that out there, y'all can disagree.
She should have 147,000.
He'll do it.
I would also venture to have like funding that's higher, I could understand, because at least me personally, I would have expectations that they would help write materials. It wouldn't just be we call them, hey, what do you think about this? They would write some alerts.
Oh,
They
yeah.
would help train Lacan leaders. They would help, like, they would be involved in doing things outside of staff too, like within our advocacy work.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big,
I don't think it's
Big
just
deal.
like here's our crisis hotline to call when we don't understand.
No.
Like, they would actively be involved in something.
yeah. I think they will earn, if it's done the way I'm envisioning it, they will earn that money, you know?
Yeah, I'm about.
Figure it out. So y'all okay with 87,000 for that? And that gives us 60 for the other two? Right?
Why not?
What?
Your numbers are correct.
Okay.
Why not?
I don't understand what this does.
Ebony, you want to stop sharing and I'll share my spreadsheet and maybe so that people can see the numbers.
Yourself. That's two.
This was a weird. This orange beige column is the current year's plan. So that's just showing the difference between, you're looking at column C right here. This is what you're currently portioning out for the different things. So everything that is in green, if you can see it, that's stuff that you already discussed and pretty much assigned a dollar figure to. You did say you would look at 2.2.1, this first responder training again. And so I put in the 87,000 here, and then I just divided what was left, the 60,000. So 30,000 for this voter awareness training, 30,000 for the co-occurring disorders training.
But if the one with the 87,000, is they just starting or is that they help me out, family now, if they just
It
started?
would be a contract with someone who has like a high level of expertise in education policy,
Yes.
navigating the education system, and they would be working very, very closely with the staff and like even, drafting, information that we need to get out to our advocacy network, helping to really, and also like training on how they are coming up with, this is what I'm looking for, and this is how I identified this as an advocacy issue. So like, for instance, if we see that Bessie's gonna be giving incentives, like I said, the high school science teacher, like they need to be able to tell the staff, like, the way I identified this for this reason, and this is the way we need to act on it.
So is we hiring them or do we?
No, it's a contract.
So they would not be a staff.
And it would be employment issues too. let me just
Yo,
throw
and
that-
employment
Yeah,
too.
So it's not just
We-
education.
Do they give us a report?
Yes, every contractor gives a report. And they would be working probably closer than other contractors, because it would be a very,
Mhm. Okay. All right.
are y'all okay with that?
I got you. Do you understand now?
Sure. I need some water.
That's, yeah.
Gonna get some water.
There's something else we need to look at?
When y'all were going through, you had said that you maybe look at IAG is the first responder training again. That doesn't mean that you have to, it's just what you said.
Okay. I don't know, did y'all want to change that? I mean, it seems like they do the first responder training, like the police and law enforcement and stuff.
Fire and-
It seems like they're training a lot of people and yeah. Okay,
Sorry.
y'all okay with keeping it like that?
Okay.
That's the one that's doing the traveling and the training and all that's for his experience moving around, right?
Tomorrow I cannot just take from both of these all for myself.
What you talking about now?
You thinking he needs more since he's
Okay.
traveling all around?
So if your money is good and your activities are, all of the activities are
Okay,
how they need to be.
do we have to review the draft or?
I have to add the funding, but
Oh, yeah.
I can do that. I don't have to share my screens for that.
Okay, so do we have to review or did we just review? Was that what we did? Yeah, we just reviewed.
You want to review one more time? I just want.
I mean, we know on the record what was said.
So we're doing 30,000 for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the other one?
Then the other one is somewhere in.
Ooh. Are we keeping it at it for him?
Okay, okay. Any other questions before we're all good with that plan?
So we going with him with the training, the money for the
So are
for the
we?
training on.
Oh, sorry.
I guess you wanna increase it, or you wanna decrease? You talk about this too.
I'm good, I'm good with it. I'm good. I'm fine.
Okay. Any public comment? Okay,
You need a motion.
okay, so we just need a motion to approve this plan to recommend to the full council. Do y'all want to recommend this plan? Who wants the motion?
Sure.
Jill, you make the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have a motion from Jill Hano. We need a second.
A second.
Angela seconds. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, do we have any abstentions? Any opposition to the motion? Okay. So unanimous. And this will be presented to the full council tomorrow, is that correct? Correct.
Okay.
And second aside, oh, the council meeting starts tomorrow at 8:30?
8:30.
Oh my goodness. 8:30, guys. Okay, so if there's no other discussion, the meeting could be adjourned by unanimous consent. An hour and a half early.
Or.
Oh, goodness.